So I come out of this hungry. Why do you still live there? Shit, I promise you I'm not alone with these thoughts. You guys are just quiet about it. So here's the question though. It's easy to see someone else is being done by going to a house that puts them at risk all the time, but it's harder to see you putting yourself in the same shitty place on a daily basis. I suggest you move.
Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Nathan Lucas from freedominfluencer.com. I hope you enjoyed that intro. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what I learned from some of my takeaways from the National Achievers Congress that I went to yesterday. And this was with Tony Robbins. Also, Gary Vaynerchuk was there. Robert from the Shark Tank. And also there was a few others. Thomas, I forget his name. There was a few other speakers. I don't want to butcher his name. Thomas Tadlock. And these were a few among other speakers. Wayne Gray was the real estate. Gary Robert was the book author. It was Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank. Gary Vaynerchuk was awesome. He wasn't there in person. He was actually... what do you call that when they are not CGI'd? A hologram. So I think that was actually one of the first times in history, if not the first time in history, there was a hologram as part of one of the keynote speakers. So that was actually pretty cool. But here's what I want to do, you guys, is I want to go over some of my notes for you. So this is all unscripted. What I want to do is I just want to share some of my notes from Tony Robbins with you guys. And, I didn't take a lot of notes, but what I did was I took some notes that I thought was important. And here's the thing is that I bought my ticket to go to this event, not knowing that I was going to get the value that I did get out of this event. And so hopefully I'm able to share some of this value and takeaways that I got out of this and share them with you that you can get some value out of this too. Because I actually bought this ticket and went to this event because one, I really have a respect for Tony Robbins and I was excited just to see the guy. So yeah, I really had no expectations going into this. And maybe that was a bad mindset, but honestly, anything was going to be good for me. So really, I think this is going to be good for you guys. So I want to share just some of this stuff. And there's a couple of points that were actually part of what he was covering as part of his curriculum. And then I actually took some notes that I want to share with you guys that I think will help you out. So a couple of things that he talked about were two master lessons that he talked about. And it's an extraordinary quality of life requires mastering two different skills. And the first one is the science of achievement. And he says this is the ability to produce results, to take anything you envision and make it real. And really, I think that this is something that I actually talked about this a little bit in the video that I posted earlier this day. and that is how you can actually manifest things in your life. So that's kind of about the science of achievement and how you can actually make things real in your life. And it's where your focus and attention goes, your energy flows. So that was one skill mastering. The second one is art of fulfillment, and he calls this an art. The ability to feel happy and joy in the process, to delight in the experience of life. Now, Thomas Tadlock was the other speaker, and he talked about this also. And he talked about how when we're experiencing life, how successful people or rich people, they have a different mindset, in how poor people or unsuccessful minded people think that life is happening to them, but successful people believe that life is happening for them. And that tends to be true. If you look at any successful person, they're always feeling like they're in some way, shape, or form, they have control of their life. And whether we do have control of our life or not, at some point we have to, if this is an art form, find fulfillment in some way, shape, or form. So that was one of his talking points, was the art. He called it an art of fulfillment, to feel happy, to feel joyful. And he talks about this as a state, a peak state that we need to practice to get in, to get ourselves in a state, a peak state. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a bit. So now I'll share some of my notes with you guys that I think will be helpful to you. And that is, he says that massive action is the cure-all. And I think if you're in business for yourself, you know that massive action is a pretty much must. You have to be taking massive action. But he says it's the cure-all and effective execution also. And then also he talks about grace and the law of familiarity. And this is what he talked about here, is he talked about how he gave an example about how he gave an example about how a man could be pursuing a woman, and how maybe have the jitters, and this could go either way, how a female could maybe be interested in a man, and you may have that anxiety, how you're nervous at first, or wow, that person, you're so attracted to them, and you feel that connection where you get that nervousness or whatever, and then all of a sudden you build up that confidence, and you do ask them out, or you go on that first date, and you get over that shyness, and you actually maybe go on that first date or that second date, and then maybe you become boyfriend and girlfriend, and then you start seeing each other for a while, and then you get to the point where maybe you get engaged, and then they become your wife or your husband, and then next thing you know, years down the road, they become your wife, and then it becomes familiar, right? And then he also talks about how you have a car, right? And then you get a brand new car, and he actually gave the example of how you get this brand new car, and you get a scratch maybe after a week, and then you get maybe another scratch after week 2, and how that really makes you feel, and then you get pissed off. But then, you're busy in life, and you have to move on. So you walk to the other side, pretend it's not there, whatever. You move on. You're busy, right? And then all of a sudden, you have a dent in your brand new car, right? And so next thing you know, what happens over time is your car, your brand new car that you saved up for, just becomes another car, right? And then he relates that to how he wasn't talking about the car, it was actually your relationship. And he says, how is that possible? how we can go from, this person who was, your one and only, right? And you ended up marrying them, and they became your one and only, your person that you married. And it just becomes another relationship. And he talks about that being familiarity, right? Is the law of this. And it's something that we need to be conscious, and we need to bring ourselves to a peak state to be aware of this. And so that's just one thing that I wanted to, bring up to you guys, that, maybe that's something that you guys are dealing with maybe it's not just inside of a marriage, but, this could be inside friendships. It could be inside family relationships. It could be inside any relationship. So I wanted to bring that up. And then also another point that he talked about is growing. And I definitely think that this is a big thing, because when I started my business online, I was already in personal development. So I thought that I didn't need to go deeper into the personal development world. And I had some mentors telling me that I needed to submerge myself even more so into personal development and growing my mindset. And I was actually kind of pushing back at that, because I was already doing that. I was already reading books. I already thought that I had a growth mindset. So I was actually kind of shut down to the idea of growing my mindset more. And at the time, I didn't realize this, but not being open to growing more only meant that I needed to be in a place where I needed to grow more. So if there's ever a place in your life where you feel that you don't need to grow more in any area of your life, you absolutely, now is the time that you need to make the decision right now that this is the perfect time to commit to start growing again. Because there's never a time in our lives in any area where we should ever stop growing. And that's just a fact in any area of life. And so now I know that. Now I've had, some mentorship. Now I've come to the point where I now know that I will never be at a point where I'm good to go, where, I'll, wash my hands and I'm good in any area of life. I commit to a growth mindset. And I think that that's where we all need to be. We all need to be learning and growing in progress. So he says that if we're not growing, we're dying. And this is what he says. He says the definition of happiness is progress. All right? That's what Tony says, was happiness is progress. And that's a way of looking at it that I had never thought about before. And I agree with it 100%. So now I want to talk about, I don't know if you guys have ever been to a Tony Robbins event. This was my first one I've ever been to. Absolutely think that you should go see this man. I will definitely be going to see him again. Probably to one of his own seminars. This was the National Achievers Congress, so he only spoke for about 3 hours, but I would love to go see him, and I recommend you guys go see him at one of his own seminars, that he holds for an entire weekend. I plan on doing that sometime in the future, but I want to talk more about that state we were talking about. And so basically he talks about being in a peak state, right? And then he said that he had a friend in India. And I could swear that I was listening to Lewis Howes' podcast, and I forget the gentleman's name, but he brought someone on from India, and he was talking about coming from a beautiful state, right? And Tony Robbins also said the same thing, that he had a friend from India, and he never thought about it the same way, but he made this correlation with his friend about how Tony has always, taught that we can train ourselves to be in a positive, and put ourselves in a peak state. And basically what Tony Robbins teaches is that motion creates emotion, and he gave us like an exercise when we were there. Basically says, turn to your neighbor, for everyone around you for a minute. Introduce yourself to everyone you can around you for a minute. But in doing so, I want you to pretend like you don't want to do this exercise. Pretend you don't care to introduce yourself. And I want you to pay attention to all the muscles in your face. Pay attention to your stature, your shoulders, and see how your physiological, what you're made up of, and see how your stature is. See how you move. And what happens is, the way that we're made up is that our motion creates emotion. And if we're pissed off, if we're angry, if we're depressed, what we're feeling, a lot of times how we're moving can create an emotion on the inside. So this is true if we're happy as well. So what he did, even when we first started, so when he came out and, they introduced him, you saw in the video in the beginning, they're all jumping around. We're all jumping around, right? He wanted to get the entire crowd in a better state to start, right? And then later told us why he did this. Basically what he did was he had us jump up, and he said, we need to raise the energy in the room, had us jump up and down, right? And do some exercises, just like charging us up and getting us happy. And he basically talks about, I'll sum this up for you guys. There's two different states you can be in. And to sum this up, you can be in a beautiful state, is what he says, a beautiful state, or in a state of suffering. Basically, a beautiful state is a state that is anything, you can think of it as positive, right? Anything that would be good in your life that supports you in a positive light, that helps you get things done, that helps you accomplish your goals, that helps you get things, what you want to get done in life, that would support you and your family and your friends and good in life. Suffering now isn't only what you would think it would be. So it's not only suffering, but it could even be something that would just be a hindrance or a nuisance. So if something was annoying, or if something was upsetting, right? Something that you wouldn't necessarily think of as suffering, but if something was, just not necessarily pleasant, that would be a state of suffering. So if we, on a conscious level, bring ourselves to a state, a peak state, or a state of beauty, or a beautiful state, we can actually practice bringing ourselves to this positive peak state, and practice doing this every day. And so you guys, the beautiful state, what he basically says is there's three things that causes us to basically fall into so I wrote down here, there's three different things that cause suffering, right? And so these three things are fear of loss, fear of less, and then fear of never. So fear of loss would be fear of loss of, take your pick. So fear of lost time, fear of lost money, fear of lost family, fear of lost whatever, take your pick. Whatever you feel like you lost something, right? Or fear of less. What do you feel like you have less of? Less time, less money, less love, less sex, whatever. Fill that blank in. What do you feel like you have less of? This can put you in a state of suffering, right? And then the worst one, he said, is the fear, or the state, fear of never. So this one's the worst because it puts us in a state where we feel we never can have something, which is why he says this is the worst one. So fear that I will never have, or never basically fill that in. Whatever it is in your life that you want or you want to accomplish in your life or move your life towards, if you have a fear of never, that would put you in a place of suffering, right? So basically, you can move yourself into a beautiful state and away from a place of suffering by practicing and training yourself to move to a beautiful state. And this is amazing, you guys, because this is funny. It's not funny because this is really how our society has become. But honestly, this is what he said, and it makes so much sense, is that so many people wake up on the wrong side of the bed, right? We have bad days, and we don't need an excuse to have a bad day, and nobody bats an eye about that, right? He said that people will say, oh, I had a bad day, or I'm having a bad day, and they'll just be grumpy, right? They got, they're using muscles, and it takes energy to be in a bad mood, right? It takes energy and effort to be upset and be angry, and a lot of times we don't even know why. We don't have to have a reason to be upset, right? We're just upset. And a lot of times we might ask someone, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? Why are you upset? Why are you mad? Well, I woke up today. There's no reason. People just are mad. And that rubs off on other people, right? So then other people start catching that vibe, right? Yeah, today is kind of shitty, right? Yeah, and then people get upset. Now here's the funny part, and it just blows my mind when he brought this up, and it makes you'll just be like, what? That makes no sense. Is that what if we said to ourselves that I don't need a reason to celebrate? Right? I don't need a reason to celebrate. I don't need a reason to be grateful. I'm just going to start choosing to only look at the things in my life to be grateful for. I'm going to start being thankful. I'm going to start being grateful for my house, for my wife, for my family, for my children, for, the things that I have every single day that I can be grateful for. I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to celebrate right now. And when we do that, we can put ourselves in a beautiful state, and we can live in this beautiful state and come to this place of gratefulness every single day. We can live in this beautiful state. But you know what happens if we were to do that? If we were to do that and we just walk up to our friends like we're on top of the mountain because we're celebrating. We're celebrating just because we're grateful and we're joyful and we're happy. You know what would happen? They'd probably say we're on crack and we need to take some pills to calm our shit down. And that's a sad thing, but that's the society we live in. See, society and most people would say, oh, so-and-so is having a bad day. And you know what? I think they're right. It is a bad day, right? And more than likely, they'll join in with us for no reason having a bad day. People will start agreeing that it is a bad day. But if we choose to have an amazing day, right, for no reason at all, or we choose to find the reasons, because the reasons are there. There are plenty of reasons why today is a good day, why every day is a good day. And if we choose to focus on those and celebrate every day and choose to come to a place of a beautiful state, then people look at us like we're cuckoo. But not everyone. Tony Robbins, he won't. I won't, that's for sure. But you guys, that's really what I took away from this. And honestly, it was a lot more than what I expected. I feel like I definitely got, definitely got value out of this. And I hope that, me sharing this with you guys, that you got value out of this. Let me know what you thought of this. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Have you ever seen Tony Robbins before? If so, let me know what you think below in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, or haven't been to freedominfluencer.com for training on internet marketing, I'd love to see you over there too. I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye for now.